Hello again, everybody, and welcome to Two Man Game. I'm Bob Ramsey. That's my partner, Matt Rocchio. And I want to, off the top, offer thanks to my friend and broadcast partner, Earl Austin Jr., who took my spot last week. Schedule conflict. He is so brilliant. And Rock, you and I were talking just a little bit ago, and we've got to hook and corral Earl into being a regular contributor on Claib's Online. He's too good. He's got too much knowledge.
He's so good, and he also happens to be just one of the nicest. But I mean, it's going to be the easiest. It's going to be the easiest reel in we've ever had. Because you say, Earl, you want to talk some basketball, and he's like, yeah, let's talk some let's talk some freaking basketball. So I mean, he's the best. I had so much fun talking about that episode with him. It was fantastic breaking down. We kind of got into a lot of the things we saw in Game 6 and 7 in the Eastern Conference Finals between Tatum and Butler. And, man, that was a great breakdown from him. But also, away from the NBA stuff, getting his perspective on all the things that have happened in this offseason for St. Louis, that was also – I loved being able to talk to him about that. The excitement, the passion, the perspective he gave really on how impressive Travis Ford has been and how he's built a team up across a couple seasons in a way that a lot of St. Louis fans have seen before but have not gotten to see enough. There's just those insights from Earl, they were incredible.
The only thing that's missing from and this sounds like an excuse. It's not. It's just an observation. The only thing missing from Travis Ford's time so far in St. Louis is luck.
Yeah. That's a very good point. And hey, it's a game of inches, and sometimes you need the ball to bounce your way a couple times.
Exactly right. So let's get to the big game, Game 1 tonight. And before we get there, despite the fact that I wasn't on Two Man Game in the last episode, my streak continues of calling every single playoff game wrong.
Yeah, I can't believe it actually broke down that way. It started kind of shifting towards the Celtics after Game 5, but then obviously Jimmy Butler comes in and staves off elimination in an incredible Game 6. I mean, anytime you're talking about a guy in a Miami Heat jersey doing things that LeBron James and Dwayne Wade never did or had to do, I guess maybe is a better way to frame it, in the playoffs, that's going to be extremely impressive, and that's exactly what Jimmy Butler was doing. That Game 6 was Herculean. What he was able to do was impressive, but at the same time, just not having a full Heat roster required him to do that. And I think that's what you saw then in Game 7. The Celtics jump out to a huge lead. They were able to target Duncan Robinson on a few switches right off the bat to get some easy buckets. They were able to abuse Kyle Lowry, who just isn't able to move at the way he needs to be moving right now to be an NBA playoff player for the Heat. And they looked like the Celtics were going to run away with it, but then everything we've talked about with Miami still was able to play out. Max Strus started hitting some big shots. Jimmy Butler goes absolutely ham. Bam Adebayo and that defense is able to lock in a little bit, force some turnovers, and maybe get a couple of those transition buckets going. And then you come down to the fact that Jimmy Butler has an open three to potentially win the game. We could very well be talking about Warriors, Heat right now.
Except that was a terrible shot.
I'm going to say this is really the one thing I wanted to get into. I wanted to touch on this a little bit because this is kind of
I love Jimmy.
Yes, I know you do.
I love him.
You wanted him to put that. You wanted him to show that, put it back down on the floor as soon as he gets Horford coming towards him. It's only a one. Yeah, I understand it completely.
Here's what's going to happen. Horford's going to foul him. Either he's going to foul him and send him the line for two, or he's going to go dunk it and get fouled and go and get a chance for 3 points. It was a bad shot selection.
I mean, they scored 14 goals the other night in the Western Conference Finals in the NHL, and no one was skating faster than Al Horford was that night. I mean, he was moving, and he was trying to recover, and it was not going to go well for him. It's why he didn't really contest the shot that well in the first place, because he got beat so bad. But you can't help but when you see him pull up and you see Horford completely lunging, just completely head 2 feet in front of his feet. There's no way he can recover if Jimmy puts it back down and tries to finish through contact. And, just the kind of player that Jimmy Butler is, I always like him driving with the ball and trying to finish in contact, then shooting a three. With that said, I'm not going to criticize that shot. He had his defender off.
He was open.
And he was open. And you got to hit it. So, but man, I love the fact that.
Here's the thing. If you're coming down the court and you get an open shot, I don't want you shooting any shots. Set somebody up. time and score. But
that's another thing. There was 15 seconds left on the clock when he released the ball. A lot of people are saying, "Well, the game's over." Then I'm like, "Have you been watching the rest of that game?" Yeah, I know the Heat would have been a backbreaking moment for the Heat, and momentum would have been all in their way. But I mean, clearly the Celtics would have had something.
He's not a 40% 3-point shooter.
No,
he's not. He'll hit occasional ones, but there's the key word. There's occasionally. He's a scorer. He's a get to the bucket, make moves, and so really, again, I don't agree with his shot selection, but it broke my heart because I'm a Butler fan. However, I kind of wanted the Celtics to win because of Tatum. So however it worked out, it was going to work out. But I just think I got to be objective and say I just didn't like that shot.
Yeah, it was, and it's just funny to me how just sports has this way of setting us up for these discussions in the weirdest way. It's like everything it looked like we were going to talk about, the Celtics are blowing it out. The Heat make a big comeback, but the Celtics are able to survive. But yet we still get one moment, and just if it happens like anything, if like Hal Horford's like buried all over him and he tries to go to the rack, or if any little permutation of that play is different, we're not talking about it 4 or 5 days later. But we can't help it because it was right there on the edge. It's Jimmy Butler. He's more of a driver than a shooter, so on and so forth. But in that moment, the way that game's going, he had hit a couple big threes to kind of get him to that point, so I understand it.
It doesn't alter my love for Jimmy Butler. He's so much fun to watch. I just love the guy.
I don't know. It's hard not to love Jimmy Butler. I mean, the guy willingly plays for Tom Thibodeau until he just gets so fed up with it he's cursing out all his teammates. I mean, it's just he's an ultimate player. I mean, I love Jimmy Butler.
I do too.
Again, I also have a respect for anybody who goes to school at Marquette. I personally like to have be able to have my hands outside my pocket for more than 6 months of the year. Just not to worry about frostbite and things like that. But that's just me. So I mean, hard-nosed player Jimmy Butler.
And you shoot like you're wearing mittens anyway.
I do. That's a very good point. Yes, I do. You're right. I need that second.
That was gratuitous.
I need that second hand too high. No, hey, you moved that second. You moved that second hand back, and it's been completely different. I tell you that right now.
No, team me up. That was gratuitous.
Bob Ramsey, shooting coach in the Chaffetz Arena, fixing my shot in 5 minutes flat.
Look at that elbow.
It's like, for me, it's that second shot. So anyway, let's talk about what we now have, which is Jason Tatum and the Boston Celtics facing off against Steph Curry and the Golden State Warriors. Obviously, there's other players on the team. We're going to talk about them as well. So I had 3 big questions. If you're watching the show, you saw them in the show post. So I want to make sure we hit those. So Bob, I'm going to give you an option. Do I go most nerdy to least nerdy, or least nerdy to most nerdy? Which way do you want this?
You know what? Let's dive into the nerd world right away.
Yes. All right. Perfect.
Slap us right in the face with a cold, wet towel of nerdism.
All right. Here it is. You will not hear me in every episode talking about this series. I'm not going to be able to shut up about screens, and I usually don't in the first place. But particularly in this series, I'm not going to be able to shut up about screens because it's going to completely define this entire game. And the reason why I say that. Talk about first when the Celtics are when the Celtics offense is against the Golden State defense. The biggest question for me is going to be, who do they use to screen with Tatum? Now, I think you also are going to see a lot of screens where they use Marcus Smart and then Tatum's the screener. But I think more so than that one, the biggest thing is going to be when Jason Tatum is the ball handler, how do they enact the screen game there? Is it Grant Williams? Is it Marcus Smart? How do they do that, and then how does Jason Tatum attack it from there? Because a lot of the times against the Heat, they would blitz him when he would bring the ball up, and he would turn the ball over. But in Game 7, one of the reasons they were able to continue fighting off those Miami surges was because Tatum was making the extra pass off the blitzes. And I expect, despite the fact that the Warriors were the second highest ball switching team or switching team in the NBA on pick and rolls, I expect them to kind of hedge it and blitz it, because you bring Marcus Smart over as the screener for Jason Tatum, he's going to be dragging Steph Curry over. Steph Curry is one of the most attacked players defensively, and there's a reason for it. So that's going to be the big question is, they don't want Curry to be isolated on a switch, so they're going to blitz Tatum. So can Tatum make those secondary passes, those looks off of that initial high screen? That's going to be the big question. And then flip it, how is the Warriors going to attack the Boston Celtics, the Warriors run the most screens in the league during the regular season. And the big question is going to be, how are they going to get people open? How are they going to isolate the defenders on Boston? So guys like Peyton Pritchard, when they're out there for little moments, is Boston able to take those moments and just assassinate Peyton Pritchard in those kind of plays? That's going to be the big question. Then also, how do they attack Marcus Smart, Jaylen Brown, Jason Tatum? You have Jalen Poole, you have Klay Thompson, you have Stephen Curry. You have the firepower to beat this Boston defense. The question is, though, is how are you going to get those guys open? How are you going to attack it? The answer to the Warriors one is, I don't know yet, because they are going to change up every single game. And that's going to be the most fascinating part. That's why the screens are going to be not just the biggest part in game one. They're going to be the thing I mentioned throughout every game in this series, because how is Golden State running all of those different Boston Celtics through the screens? How are they making sure that Robert Williams is getting dragged out to open up the paint? And then on the other side, is Jason Tatum able to effectively pass out of the blitzes, and can the Golden State Warriors stop the Celtics from murdering them on Stephen Curry switches? It's going to be a game of screens every single night.
Yeah, and so I think you're right. How does Tatum handle the double teams blitzing him? I think that is absolutely the point. And then when he does find the open man, in particular Brown, can't have off nights or you will lose. Now, on the other hand, the elementary solution for when Boston's on defense is, well, switch everything. Well, that's easier said than done, depending on how you want to switch it, because all three of those shooters for Golden State, they don't need any space. They need almost no space. Mm-hmm. So you almost have to switch it so tight it almost looks like a hedge. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? You got to be so on it, and that's where they can get you when you're trying to overplay it. So my short answer is kind of like yours. I don't know what Boston's going to do because of the space. Now, hope is not a plan, but you need Poole and Klay. You only need one of them to have an off night to allow you to do other things you want to do. And maybe it's actually even putting some of your bigs switching out on some of the shooters. I don't know. That can be a dangerous game as well.
Well, the funny thing is that Golden State has no issue with that. I mean,
that's
why you are not going to see Marcus Smart, Al Horford, or Jason Tatum, Al Horford pick and rolls, because they'll switch Draymond Green onto Jason Tatum, and they will be completely fine with that. Absolutely. That's why every screen in my mind is going to have to be Jaylen Brown, Marcus Smart, and Jason Tatum in some permutation. Also Grant Williams in there, because there's different times where he's a 3 or a 4, and I'm sure he'll have weird non-defenders on him for the Warriors. They might hide Curry on him for a little bit, but I think for the most part they're going to try to hide Curry on Smart. But you bring those guys into your screen so that Curry is always being tasked. Again, the Warriors, and that happened all the time in the Mavericks series, the Warriors' response was to hedge and blitz. And essentially what that did was it forced the ball out of Luka Doncic's hands early. Now, the difference was, and the reason why the Mavericks were able to to look a little bit better and in previous series win a lot more games, is because their shooters were hitting those secondary shots. So now the question will then become, is the half-court offense of the Celtics in those situations, Jaylen Brown, Marcus Smart, Grant Williams, Al Horford, pulling up, will they be enough? And I think that's going to be a question I actually think we will see kind of early on, because this is a Celtics team that won by grit and defense early in games against the Heat, and then at times was letting the Heat back in so hard, but they were still coming out with wins. And so I'm wondering, is this team getting a little bit long in the legs a little bit in this playoff run? Grant Williams was looking a little sluggish.
Is the grind
getting to him? Yeah. Al Horford, his shot's still there, but his defense has been a little bit slower than it was in those early series. So I think, are there legs there in game one after they've had their longest break really of the playoffs? That's going to be something early on for Boston that I'm going to want to see. But the bottom line is, I think we know early how Boston is going to force Golden State to play it. But the question always is going to be, as we saw in the Mavericks series, when the Warriors in one half against Luka Doncic threw him 4 or 5 different basic defensive things. They threw him zone, they threw him box and one, they threw him hedges, they threw him switches, everything. Golden State's going to constantly be changing it up. But the constant on the other side is going to be Boston forcing them to come up with different things for Curry to do. It's counter, it's counter punch, point, counterpoint, however you want to phrase it. Is Jason Tatum having the ball handling and vision part of his game? Can he take that one to a step up? And then, as we're going to get talking to the more general point later on, can he step up overall? All I know is that hedges, screens, those kind of things, it's going to be huge. One other one that I really think is going to be interesting, and this is the Celtics defending the Warriors. The Celtics defending the Celtics going against the Warriors. The Warriors switch off-ball screens like crazy. And I wonder if that's a part of the game where we haven't looked at it because sometimes it's hard to watch off ball. I wonder if that's something where the Grant Williams and the Jaylen Browns, if that's going to be maybe where Golden State is able to win this on the margins, taking away those little plays where those guys are able to get space where they have to because they can't create plays on their own. Jaylen Brown is not a good enough ball handler to create offense on his own. If he has a little space, he can do fine. But taking away that little bit of space by switching off-ball screens in a way that the Celtics haven't seen for the majority of the year, that's one of the little things. It's hard to watch for, but that could be a margin thing here that kind of changes the game in favor of the Warriors that you might not see but really could come out.
I don't think the Celtics have enough firepower to win the series. Having said that, if they can get a couple of games in California where they can not just win the battle on the glass, but have a game or two where they can dominate the boards, and I think they're capable of that. I really do.
Yeah.
If they can get 1 or 2 games to dominate and steal a game by, as we talked about, their grind. If they can get their grind going, and part of the grind is once you've grinded defensively, you got to close it out by getting the rebound, right?
Yeah.
And on the other side, if you concede, and they may not, if you concede that your offense is not as good as Golden State's, well, then what do? Well, you got to attack and you got to get offensive rebounds to give you more opportunities. So I know I'm the old school guy, so I might as well play my role and say defense and rebounding. Right?
Hey, I don't disagree. Everyone wants to come into this series talking about Steph Curry, Jordan Poole, Klay Thompson, and Draymond Green. But there's a very good chance that we're talking about one of the biggest boons to the Warriors, and one of the reasons that they win this series that the Celtics weren't accounting for is just how good Kevon Looney has become as a guy who can move his feet on the perimeter, block shots at the rim, and like you said, clean the glass if he's not going up against an absolutely dominant center. He's never going to beat out a guy like Nikola Jokic, but you put him against Dwight Powell in the Mavericks, and he absolutely runs that guy off the floor. Robert Williams is not Dwight Powell, but Robert Williams is nursing a knee, and Al Horford's 36, almost about to turn 37. So that's one thing where the Warriors kind of have a little bit of an advantage over the Celtics that maybe we weren't accounting for to that level. Obviously, Draymond, we knew, but maybe not Kevon Looney to that level.
I think that's a little bit of a reach. I don't think Otto Porter is going to play tonight. I think he could help even those things up. But you mentioned Horford's age, and Marcus Smart's not listed as injured, but we know, or I believe he's a little compromised. He's been banged up for a while. Hey, I hope everybody on the floor is healthy because then there's no excuses, but I'm concerned about Marcus Smart.
Yeah, that's a good point. It'll be interesting. How many times do they run Curry through screens just because they know Marcus Smart doesn't want to take the beating? Marcus Smart's going to take the beating, but oh man, we're going to get oh my God, game 1, like Draymond Green's going to elbow him in the face or something. Oh man, I just realized we're going to get like Marcus Smart and Draymond Green shithousery at some point during this series. I've been thinking so much about like technical, like actually good defense and offense, and how much 3-point shooting is going to matter, and where's the secondary scoring for the Celtics, all this other stuff. And I was like, oh yeah, I forgot to account the fact that we have 2 of the most intense players on a basketball court on the planet Earth right now.
Who will out who will out gamesman the gamesmanship of those two?
Yeah, that's one way to put it. So you were talking about defense. I'm going to move to my second point on the game,
Okay.
on this series, I should say. The Celtics had the number one offense or number one defense in the regular season. The Warriors had the number two defense in the regular season, and the Celtics right now, during the playoffs, are holding teams to a worse offense than the worst offense in the regular season of the NBA.
Yep.
That's how good the Celtics are. So despite the fact that it's 1-2, I really do think, just pure defensively, the Celtics are in a tier of their own, even compared to a team like the Warriors. So defense is going to matter here. So the question becomes, is the Warriors' offensive, firepower of Curry, Poole, Thompson, is that going to be enough to completely change this game, or is this really going to be a slog out finals for the majority of it? And I honestly think
there will be games in large segments of games where it's really ugly, and maybe one or two whole game. I think this will go at least 6 and probably 7, but there'll be, in every game, there's going to be a time where it just really bogs down. And we may even have a whole game or two where it's mud wrestling. But the Warriors' offense and their shooters are so good, there'll be a couple of games where they can't miss no matter what. And those games will be fun because they'll be running, they'll be shooting, and that will allow the Celtics to try and keep up. That'll make that fun. I don't think they can match them basket for basket, but that'll be a fun game to watch wherever it comes. There'll be one or two of those.
So the only time the Warriors have ever lost a finals series, they did it because in the Cavaliers just crashed the living daylights out of the boards and just beat them up on the offensive glass and completely changed the complexion of the game and kind of zagged when everyone else was zigging. The way the Raptors beat them is they threw them a bunch of different defensive schemes that they weren't prepared for, took Curry out, and forced it to be the other guys, and it just wasn't enough at the time, obviously, with the Thompson injury. So the question is, are either of those applicable to this Warriors team? And we just talked about it. I don't think the Celtics can completely dominate them on the glass. They won't get beaten up the way the Mavericks were, but they won't dominate them. So the other part is, can you defend?
You don't think they can?
I just Robert Williams is great, but he's more of a shot blocker than he is a rebounder. I think sometimes people just say, oh, if a guy can block shots or a guy can rebound, he can do the other one. They're not, they don't always come hand in hand. And I think Robert Williams is a much better shot blocker than he is a rebounder. Kevon Looney is I don't think anywhere near the shot blocker Robert Williams is, but I think he's a better rebounder, and he's better at getting position. He's better at crashing the offensive boards than Robert Williams III is. And you combine that with Draymond being one of the best defenders ever, and that undersized 5 spot, I would take Kevon Looney and Draymond over Robert Williams III and Horford, especially right now when Robert Williams is dealing with a knee injury that's still keeping him hobbled when he has to play too much, and Horford, who is a little bit older. I got Draymond's 33, but he's a Hall of Famer already, and Kevon Looney's 26, 27, I think, and he's playing the best basketball of his career. So I think the Warriors have the lead right now in the front court, but the question is can they get past the best defense, a defense that is locking down in the playoffs? And I do really think that their offense in a couple of games is going to be enough to just slightly get them above. But when the Celtics lock in defensively, they're going to force turnovers even against this Warriors team. Now, again, this is a breakdown that makes me want to think Warriors, because there's no better team in the half court than the Golden State Warriors. So even if you slog it down, that seems to be something that's going to benefit the Golden State Warriors. But again, you slow it down and give this defense of the Celtics time to get in front of you, figure out their scheme. That's when they're at their best too. When they would get beat, it was because they couldn't run with the Heat, and when they were turning the ball over too much, the Heat was just running over them. But they can play with anybody in the half court. So, unstoppable force, immovable object, it's cliche, but I think that's what we're running into. And then the question then shifts, is the Golden State defense going to completely shut down the Boston offense to the point where we're talking about, fairly low scoring, like you said, kind of rock fight games? That's kind of where my emphasis have shifted. But one of these teams, in my opinion, has the best player on the court right now, and I think it's shifted from Steph Curry to Jason Tatum. And so, again, we're at the finals, so this is all about margins and the littlest things in the world.
So let's narrow our focus. And I had mentioned defense and rebounding. Pretty obvious. So let me narrow it and be more specific. I think for the Celtics to win, they've got to dominate their offensive glass. And here's why. They have to get more shots up. And can they create more? Can they win the turnover battle? And can they dominate their own offensive boards, their offensive glass, to create more shots? If they have the same amount of shots every night, they're going to lose. They've got to get more shots than Golden State. I'm not predicting they can. I'm just saying, in my view, for them to win, they must.
Yeah, I think part of me is wants to roll with the Celtics in this one. So I'm because again, I actually do think the Celtics are going to win this one. I'll just say it right now. I think my prediction right now is Celtics in 7, but every time I look at certain analytics and I see how good the Warriors are on defense and I see their numbers on offense, it makes me want to shift to the Warriors because, again, everything I just broke down tells you, well, yeah, then the if you go down by that breakdown, it's going to be half-court offense. The Warriors have a better offense. They both have about the same defense. It's going to break to the Warriors. But something tells me that this Celtics defense is going to give the Warriors offense fits in a way we have never seen outside of the Toronto Raptors in the finals that year, and that even was with Klay Thompson being healthy. That's how good this Celtics defense is. It's otherworldly.
I want the Celtics to win. I love Jason Tatum. I love Marcus Smart. I want them to win.
I need one prediction to be correct this year.
But I also really like Golden State.
Yeah,
and I have for a long, long time.
Yeah.
I liked them when Nate Thurman was their center.
There you go. Oh, I like that too.
I like Golden State. So I'm not really rooting against anyone. I'm just rooting for Jason Tatum. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to pick the Warriors because my streak has been 100% of picking wrong. So you take the Celtics, I'll take the Warriors, and the Celtics will win.
And finally, we've gotten to the point in the podcast where there are only 2 teams playing, and if we take opposite teams, one of us is going to be right. We finally got to this point.
Two-man game picked. They picked
There it is. Yes, we got it right. I can say it already. We called it. Way to go, us.
It's clear, though, on picks, I'm the mush. I'm the one that's I've never had a streak like this.
I've been terrible. I've been terrible too. I thought the Heat were going to run away with it again. Well, remember, don't forget my pick like 3 weeks ago when I said whichever East team it is, they're beating these West teams. And then since then, all the shine came off the Warriors, and all the shine has come right back on them in the initial 2 weeks. So I mean, that one's not looking great. Maybe my feeling that the Celtics are still going to win this one is just hubris and not being able to admit I'm wrong. That's never been a thing in my life before, so why would it pop up now? So it brings us to kind of my big overarching question, which is I think it's going to come down to the star player who has the biggest game. It's still the NBA. I think this is a deeper NBA. This is a more parity-filled NBA than we've seen in a long time. But still, it is the NBA, so this is going to come down to star players. Steph Curry, despite having the numbers in a lot of ways, has still had his 2 worst final series in the finals that he has failed to win. So, it's kind of that thought process when he goes, so go the Warriors. And so can Steph Curry finally, can he step up and win another one when they fought through injuries and the shine came off the Warriors for multiple seasons, they missed the playoffs, and now they're back. Can Steph win it again, or can Jason Tatum go from beating or challenging LeBron 4 years ago to finally getting over the hump, to finally beating the Nets, in what should have been the Celtics and the Warriors from years ago, Kyrie and KD respectively, to beating the Nets, to exercising the Bucks and the Heat demons that have kind of been on their back for over a year. Now they're here. Jason Tatum or Steph Curry, which star player is it going to be in this series that finally takes that next step?
I like the narrative, but I'm going to disagree only slightly that even with great stars, it's still a team game.
Yep.
And now, in a given last 90 seconds of a game, then a single guy can take over, yes. But over the course of the series, the Pools and the Smarts and the Browns, these guys are all going to have Thompsons. There's going to be games where these guys have to play big. Like I said, I'll agree with you in moments of games and maybe finishing off a game, but for the whole series, it's still a team effort.
And to that point, I think we talk about the team efforts. For the Warriors, Klay Thompson has had a 30-point game in each of the 3 series leading up to this one. Does Klay Thompson have another 30-point game in his bag against this Celtics team? That yes. Right there. That right there could be one of the 4 wins for the Warriors right there. And on the other side, Jaylen Brown has also had 2 games per series where he's jumped up when Jason Tatum hasn't been there, and he's helped them win games and stay in series with big games. So does Jaylen Brown have those games too? So you're right. It's not just the star players. It's going to be the sidekicks. Is Gary Payton and Otto Porter, are they able to come back healthy, and do they maybe give the Warriors that final? Is that the final maybe defensive kind of turn up that the Warriors get that completely says, now it's we got the offense, you got the defense, but we get those guys back, and now we even up the defense a little bit, and now it's just now we know the game's slowly going to start shifting, and also Gary Payton kind of changes a little bit of their defense, because maybe then they can hide Curry on somebody, again, like Grant Williams. Yeah. And they bring in Gary Payton the second. They put him on Jaylen Brown. That moves people down to Marcus Smart. Everything gets a little bit better. Also, we talk about matchups really quick again. I like Andrew Wiggins. I love the new look Andrew Wiggins, this defender who's locked in and things like that. I think the idea that Andrew Wiggins has got this Jason Tatum matchup. All right, look what he did against Doncic. Okay, we got Jason Tatum just fine. That, I think, could be something that bites Golden State in the ass early, is Jason Tatum absolutely just beats up on Andrew Wiggins. But again, my other thought process is the Warriors are so good at adapting. And so, the kind of the fourth thing we didn't really mention here, it's going to be a fascinating coaching battle. Steve Kerr obviously has the experience. Yeah. He has the coaching staff that knows this team like the back of their hand. But Ime Udoka showed something this year. I mean, they are the second team ever in NBA history to be 500 or below in January and make it to the finals. And they were arguably, you take away the first 3 months of the season, they arguably would have been the best team in the NBA for a full regular season if you just lop off the first month or two. And so the turnaround the Celtics have also tells me this isn't a team that's going to get shocked early and not be able to adapt. That's going to be the fun part. It's going to be the fun part about watching these games and coming back here in the 2-man game and talking it over. I got a yellow legal pad and a 12-pack of soda for tonight's game because, again, the switches and the defensive matchups in Game 1 are going to tell us so much. I can't wait to get back and break it down.
Well, I'll be looking for that legal pad.
There it is.
And I'm simply going to look at offensive rebound numbers for the Celtics.
And Hart. And that's you're going to just go full old school coach. Just who wants it? That's what I want. I want the who wants it. I want the who wants it more rating from Bob Ramsey.
You'll never get that from me.
I hate who wants it more so much.
Oh, I do too.
I remember Little League football. The coach would be like, "You guys know why you lost today? The offensive line had about 35 pounds on all of us. The safety was really good. The quarterback was throwing it around the yard. No, it's because they wanted it more." I think that's a little oversimplification, Coach.
Yeah. The other sport that does that, literally every single game, whether it's exhibition season in September or it's the Stanley Cup Finals, every game, the winning team outworked the other team. The losing team got outworked.
Well, they got
every game.
They got to the hard spots, Rammer. That's outworking it. I got closer to the net than you did more times, therefore I worked harder.
But you know what's funny? I know what they're going for, and not to turn this into a hockey thing, but I see what the assistant coaches are doing. I see plays are set up. I see there's more to it than that. Break it down for us. Get a whiteboard out there, for God's sake.
How dare you try to bring in nuance and logic, sir? How dare again? You know what? I agree wholeheartedly, and that's why we're gonna do better. Breaking down games 1 and 2, most likely we're gonna do better than just saying this team played harder. Because again, lock in here in these first couple games. The matchups are going to be legitimately fascinating. If you can, do yourself a favor. I'm not saying do it for the whole game. That's unrealistic. But if you're watching tonight's game, if you can, at certain points, coming out of timeouts, maybe coming out of a half or at the beginning of the third, that's always a great time. Just try to stay in the presence of mind for about 2 minutes of game time and do not watch the ball. I guarantee you, if you just force yourself to do it for a minute or two of game time, it'll completely change how you see the game unfolding. It's so hard to do, and if you're a casual fan, I get why you're just like, why the hell would I want to do that? I want to see scoring.
No, it's great.
I have Steph Curry plus six threes on Bovada. I need to be watching where the ball's going. Thank you very much. Trust me, try it, and those are the best times to do it. See the actual plays coming out of timeouts, or see those initial changes they make coming out of half, because there's no time more so when an NBA team makes those adjustments than those moments. Watch off the ball for a minute. See a guy like Steph Curry fighting through a screen. See those kind of little things today. I guarantee you'll come away from the game with a little bit more appreciation.
And I do that because in my other job of calling SLU basketball, I can't do that. I have to watch the ball. And so when I do get the opportunity to watch everything else, it's a real treat. You're right.
And again, if you watch off the ball, I guarantee you're going to be treated to at least one cheap shot from Draymond Green or Marcus Smart that the refs don't catch.
That is a mortal lock.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I'm honestly I'm going under on if I had to set the line, one would be way lower than it would be set.
No question about it. All right, well that wraps it up. So you want to pick a game tonight, or are you willing to go out?
I'm going game one. I'm going to say the Warriors take game one. I do think that something we saw early on in the playoffs that kind of died down a little bit, but I still think it's there. There is a little bit something, I think, to the home field advantage, and especially when you're reliant on your shooters. So I think game one, you're going to see teams feeling out each other a little bit much. I actually think these games will start out more open in the series and individually in games. Games are going to start out more open and get sloggier as it gets closer, as teams make little adjustments in game. You're also going to see that between games. So I think this will be the highest scoring game. This will be the most open. Therefore, it will play to the Warriors. And from there on in, I think Boston will have to maybe take some counter punches after their adjustments. So I think Warriors game one, but I am saying again, Celtics in 7.
I've seen the Warriors shit the bed at home in the last couple of weeks.
Yeah.
I'm going to take Celtics game one.
Oh, and that
they get their split. They get their split and win in 6.
Hey, series starts early then.
That's exactly right.
A series starting after game one. I love that.
That's the way it needs to be.
Amen to that.
All right, Rocc. We'll have a good weekend talking hoops. We'll catch up at the beginning of next week. That's Matt Rocchio. I'm Bob Ramsey. It's the two-man game here on Claibs Online. Thanks for being with us.
At St. Louis Acura, new inventory is arriving daily, both new and pre-owned. Our buying team adds a higher level of personalized service that others can't match. We sell over 100 pre-owned vehicles monthly, and many of these are matched by our buying teams in Missouri and Illinois. As new Acura production ramps up, be one of the lucky ones to try the newest Type S models now available. Performance has never been so stylish and comfortable. St. Louis Acura remains committed to becoming better than ever for you.